everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been talking publicly about the Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. And yes, it's been a long time. And we are still waiting on our first Super Bowl. Will we get it this year? God, let's hope. Let's hope. Now, today's show is a little bit less in quantity because Dave's been moving into the new house this week. Or this last week, towards the end of this last week, and will be all this week. So I remind you to make sure you keep your notifications turned on because shows may be a little bit jiggled around on the schedule this week because of my moving. But we shall see. Now, today we're talking about a few different things. We're starting off with the McCarthy plan. Yes, he will return this season, and will it be to glory is the question. And how will Kevin O'Connell handle that? It's a good question. We're going to debate it. And then we're going to get into this week in Vikingsland. Oh, pardon me. McCarthy comes second. This week in Vikingsland comes first. And we're going to be talking about a few things. One, the Andrew Van Ginkel extension and what it all means. I think it's a pretty good one. And two, we're going to be talking about how Minnesota fans took the draft. Yes, that's right. Was it greased up? Did they get flowers? Were they kissed? Did they like it or not? We'll find out. And then we're going to be talking about an undrafted invitee to rookie minicamp next week and the name Tommy Hill. And he's got quite a story. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikingsland with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody. We're back once again, and I'm still in daughter number two's basement, and that should last maybe a week. And then I've got to set up the new studio, which I've got to do some serious soundproofing because there is an echo down there. So it'll be a bit. Now, I did want to answer Peter's question real quick, whether Tyler will be at training camp. He will be at training camp. I doubt he'll be allowed into minicamp because he is yet to be given a credential. The Minnesota Vikings, the team we all love, are a little bit stingy with him, and it's a shame. But hopefully that'll change. Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
They're fine, Dave, but how are you, man? You've been busy as a bee for like 3 weeks straight here, moving, draft, moving again. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I tell you, I am wiped out, but it's okay. We'll get through it. We always do. Press on and press forward. Pain is only weakness leaving the body. So it is what it is.
Profound.
But it's been a fun week, to say the least. Now, let's start with the first theme. And in this one, we're going to start off with this young man. Or is he young?
Well, that's just it. Young compared to me and you, Dave, but maybe not as young in NFL standards. But yes, Vikings got busy this week. They're busy with a lot of things, but they surprised me. I don't know if it surprised you, but this came out on Tuesday. They signed Andrew Van Ginkel, who was under contract for this upcoming season, but they signed him to a 1-year deal, $23 million, a 1-year extension. And so he's a Viking through the 2026 season. This is great because I don't know, Dave, like I didn't look it up, but last year Van Ginkel signs, it was a 2-year, $20 million deal basically. So he's getting paid about $10 million. I don't know. Other than Sam Darnold and Van Ginkel had to be the best value free agents that any NFL team signed last year. Like when you look at what Van Ginkel did, he was tremendous, a constant menace to opposing offenses the whole year. And so it's really good that the Vikings signed him and extended him, because we've got a really excellent player and an extra year who doesn't hit the market. And so I think kudos to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for doing this. I also, Van Ginkel earned this extension, Dave, with what he did last year. Second team All-Pro, 11 and a half sacks, 2 pick sixes, could have had a couple more. And again, just a constant menace to opposing offenses, dropped into coverage a fair bit when he had to. Like, he just did it all on defense. And so for the Vikings, he earned this, and the Vikings paid up. And I think that, not only is that good for Van Ginkel and the Vikings, but I think also it's good. It shows NFL players, both on their team and around the league, that if you produce for the Vikings, they are going to take care of you, even if you are under contract for a year. I think players are going to notice that around the league, and their agents are going to notice that around the league, and that may pay dividends beyond this season. But so, great to see Van Ginkel get this. The interesting thing about this, though, Dave, I found, is that the Vikings, in signing Van Ginkel, are, I think, doing something. They've once again put a pretty significant amount of cash into a player who is going to be 30 years old and will be over 30 by the time this extension is over. And
now, mind you, as Tyler put out this week, and I reconfirmed, if you total up both contracts, so 3 years worth of contracts, it's only $14.333 million a year, which puts him 23rd on the present edge list. Which I still think is a value.
Oh, well,
for getting a second team All-Pro player. Oh, heck yes.
You're damn right. Nonetheless, his cap hit will be it'll be 19.4 million, I think, over the cap headed in 2026. When at that point, Van Ginkel turns 30 on July the 1st this year. He'll be turning 31 when the season starts on that extension in 2026. And the Vikings just went through a big free agent spending spree in March, where they signed Javon Hargrave, Ryan Kelly, Jonathan Allen, Aaron Jones. All of those guys are 30 years old or older.
Don't forget this guy.
That's right. Harrison Smith comes back for a 14th year, redid his contract. So he's 35. The NFL, Dave, we know youth is usually king. Teams are very reluctant to sign multiple players 30 years of age or older, unless they're a quarterback, to mucho coin. And this year, the Vikings went on a $300 million spending spree. Some of that isn't going to be realized, and it wasn't all on the 30-year-olds, but they've spent quite a bit on 30-year-old or more players. That's something that you just don't see in the NFL much these days, because NFL teams are wary about giving players who are 30 and over big, any kind of significant cash, because they figure they're on the downside of their careers. It's not going to be a good investment for them long term. The Vikings seem to disagree with that based on what they did, at least this offseason. And I think in Van Ginkel's case, we don't need to worry too much about this. He doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires, Dave. He didn't play a crap ton in Miami when he was there. It kind of varied from year to year. Last year, he reached his career high in snaps played, defensive snaps, but even that wasn't like a gargantuan 90 percentile. I think he's a young 29. I think this deal is going to age well. And like you said, we have seen other edge rushers hit 30 or get into the 30s and perform well. Von Miller comes to mind. Leonard Floyd comes to mind. Heck, last year, Danielle Hunter, he wasn't quite 30 the whole year, but he turned 30 in October, got 12 and a half sacks, led the league in pressures, I think, from his position. He had an outstanding year. And so I think Van Ginkel, with the lack of tire or tread on his tires for a 29, soon to be 30-year-old, I think this deal is going to age well, and Van Ginkel has an excellent chance of performing very strongly during the life of this deal. And like you said, Dave, even with the extension the amount of money they're putting out, that makes him, if he's 23rd among edge rushers in the NFL with what he did last year, even if he drops back a little from that, you're still getting hella great value from what you're paying Van Ginkel, considering what he's doing for the Vikings.
Yes, I agree. And he's peaking at the optimum time in his career for Minnesota. And sometimes there are late bloomers that come to fruition, and he is. And now throw in the fact that Dallas Turner was supposedly geared up to play his role, to take over for him. Dallas Turner's going into the Patrick Jones slot, as we talked about last week, and is looking to get 50% of the snaps. That's going to keep Van Ginkel fresh. The whole rotation. We talked about it with Flores moving people in and about, and all the older two defensive linemen creating pass rush and such. It is going to extend his career, in my opinion, to maximize things a bit. And I hear that I think Katie just arriving home. That's why the dogs are going nuts. Sorry about that, folks. But it is what it is. And I see everybody talking about weather where they're at. Aaron, it's only 80 in Texas. Yeah, it's chilly. It's 61 up here in St. Louis. And in Yellowknife, Darren, are you above freezing yet?
We are. I think it's like 5 Celsius today. But we still have some snow on the ground, on the rocks, mostly on the rocks. Yellowknife's a very rocky place. Check it out sometime on Google. But great that you mentioned Dallas Turner Day, because when this extension came up, one thing we didn't mention was there was some wailing and gnashing of teeth that, this is a signal that the Vikings feel that, don't believe in Dallas Turner, or they don't feel he's ready for a primetime role. And I just feel the opposite. Again, if Dallas Turner, I don't know if you necessarily want edge rushers or any defensive player playing 80 or 90% of the defensive snaps, because they're going to be gassed by the fourth quarter when you really need them, or when you could need them for a big play. And it's good rotation. The other thing is, Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel did not miss a game last year. I don't think they got injured at all or missed a snap unless they were taken out by Flores. I hate to say it, but the chances of that happening 2 years in a row are not that great. So quality depth at edge rusher or any position is good. If Van Ginkel, misses a game because he's got a soft tissue injury, or Grenard does, Dallas Turner is going to get those extra snaps. And also they've got Dallas Turner to go in there and replace one of those guys, other than instead of the Vikings having to depend on maybe Bo Richter or Gabe Murphy or somebody else who maybe isn't quite as a known quantity. So I don't think this was a comment on Dallas Turner not being ready to take the next step. It's just the Vikings want quality depth, and 3 edge rushers working in the mix quite a bit that's what all teams want to see, I think. And last year the Vikings did it quite a bit with Patrick Jones III coming in, playing, I think, about 50% of the defensive snaps, maybe a bit more. Maybe it was close to 60. And that's the role that Dallas Turner is going to start out with in his second year. Now he can cut into that by playing really, really great, and the Vikings can't afford to get him off the field. Or the Vikings use, like the NASCAR package more than like they did last year, with 4 basically edge rushers on the field instead of having a couple of defensive linemen or 2 defensive linemen. There's a whole bunch of ways to get Dallas Turner on the field. And I don't think that and there's also a lot of ways to keep Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard on the field. And Brian Flores is going to figure out the way to do that.
Without a doubt. I think it's a great move by the Vikings. I think it is value. It does show that Minnesota takes care of its players, which will benefit us in the long run. I think it's a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Now, bringing us to the next subject of this week in Vikings land, fans were a little bit upset with the draft.
yeah. Yeah. So you passed along some information. You got it from a guy named, I think, Adam Johnson from the Sports Geek. And he talked about the Sports Geek looked at, they tracked social media reactions from NFL fans after the draft, from I think the first round on till when it ended. And so he passed along, we're a week since the draft occurred. All the hot takes are out there. We talked about it last week, how we felt about it. Everybody commented last week in the comment section, and a lot of them are back this week. So those things are out there. But the Sports Geeks stats, they wanted to see, how did NFL fans feel about their respective team drafts. And as you see on the board there, Vikings fans didn't seem to be all warm and fuzzy about what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the Vikings did last weekend with the draft. Even though Dave, you and I and Tyler, during the whole draft, ourselves, first and SKOL, we felt we were pretty optimistic about what the Vikings did, and I think realistic about what the Vikings did. Well, Vikings fans were not as pleased as we were with how they did. You can see it on there. 18,874 negative social media reactions to the Vikings draft, which makes us 10th best or 10th worst, depending on how you view it.
10.
Yeah, top 10, yes. And as you see, we weren't anywhere close to how Cleveland Browns fans felt about their draft, but still, Vikings fans
were justified.
yes. But I think
the first round pick. Yeah.
Yes. Vikings fans were not happy. It seems like or maybe it's the vocal minority who just tweeted a shit ton about how much they hated it. But 18,000 over 18, almost 19,000 negative social reactions about the Vikings draft shows that some people weren't very pleased about that. I do understand where that's coming from, Dave. I don't agree with it, but I understand where it comes from. I think one factor is a lot of Vikings fans were expecting, hoping, and that the Vikings would trade down from 24 because they felt that was a real necessary thing the Vikings had to do with only 4 draft picks coming into the draft, and the fact that they felt we needed to get more draft capital. So when the Vikings didn't do that on the first night of the draft and trade out at 24, I think quite a few Vikings fans were pretty pissed about that, especially when they saw what the Rams and the Texans got for trading down. And they were just a couple of, the Texans picked right after us, or were supposed to, and the Rams are only a couple of picks after that. So that pissed off Viking fans. Hey, look what we could have got if we had traded down. We could have gotten a 1 in 2026 and a 20 and et cetera, et cetera. That's one reason. So you don't trade down. Vikings fans get pissed about that, or some of them do. Then when you do stick at 24, who do you select? You select a left guard. Well, again, not a sexy pick. People always want the wide receivers. They want the edge rushers. They want the quarterbacks. We picked a left guard, Jan. Yeah. So that also, I think, increased the angst amongst some Vikings fans that this draft sucked. The final factor is that Jackson, whether you were excited or yawning when he got picked, Jackson's probably, and I think it's probably guaranteed, he's going to be the only draft picked out of those 5 that's going to start for the Vikings in 2025. And a lot of fans equal starters, or look at starters equals great draft when they assess a draft. Well, if only one of your 5 draft picks is going to see the field at all, a lot of Vikings fans just felt that the Vikings didn't address needs. They didn't pick the blue chip guys. It's a bad draft. When we know, 3 of their picks were late on day 3. You don't get starters generally, day 1 starters from that. The Vikings only had so many ways to address that. The Vikings didn't have a roster that needed a bunch of rookies to come in there and start right away. We've already got established starters there, and good ones in a lot of cases. So still, I think those 3 factors are why we saw, those stats show the Vikings fans reacting negatively to the NFL draft. Again, I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is.
Well, I've had a few questions on this whole thing to start off with. All right, so they got total number of negative tweets.
Mm-hmm.
How many positive tweets were there?
Right.
how many respondents were they, total that they checked and over what time period, et cetera, et cetera. And then base it on what are the markets, how enthused are the fans in each of those markets to start off with. There's Minnesota. There's one sport that's king in Minnesota. Now, hey, Timberwolves are pressing on. Hopefully we'll win a championship. Be the first men's team to do it since the Twins back in the 90s. We'll see. The Wild, they got blown out in the first round, unfortunately. What's that, 8 in a row or some ungodly number?
Mm-hmm.
And, but everybody cares about the Vikings. The Vikings own the town. Now, in Buffalo, obviously the Bills own the town. They probably have a minor league baseball team and maybe
they do
a hockey team, the Sabres. But that's it, so how much is it owned by a town? You get Arizona Cardinals. How much do they care? They've been so bad for so long. They're down in Arizona, with a bunch of, snowbirds and such. It's interesting to measure how people responded per, their fan base. How vocal are their fan bases? We know Minnesota Vikings has a very vocal fan base, both on the positive and the negative side. And there's plenty of negative Nancys out there that, no matter what they do, it's wrong.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it was an interesting stat.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. But you're right. It's true. Like how many positive social media reactions were there? And where did the Vikings place amongst NFL fans there? We didn't get that.
Right. And what's the percentage?
Yeah. So, the stats are stats and you can sometimes work them the way you like. And sometimes things get left out that are important too. And as we talked about, when you sent me that stat, I was also interested in finding, like, were there any trends in what those negative reactions, like what were the reasons for the negative reaction? Was it they didn't feel we'd get enough picks, or the players that we picked sucked? I think it would have been interesting
to trade down in first. What was the reasons?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we'll never know. But anyways, I thought it was an interesting topic, and so we did it. Now on to the next one. The young kid from Nebraska.
Yeah. Sticking with the draft. Last week we talked about how the Vikings had drafted 5 players. They had drafted some needs, but with only 5 draft picks, they couldn't address every potential need that they had. And one of the ones that they didn't address, and I was surprised by this because I thought that they would, was that they didn't address the secondary, particularly corners, during the draft. And they didn't really address it heavily when they, with their crop of 20 undrafted rookie free agents either. They signed 2 cornerbacks out of that 20. Well, what we learned this week, an interesting name is attending the rookie tryouts during the rookie minicamp, which is going to take place next weekend, May 9th to the 11th for the Vikings. And that's Tommy Hill from Nebraska. Interesting because Hill is a guy who, after his 2023 season in Nebraska, he was getting first round buzz going into the 2020 or, heading into this draft. He had an excellent 2023 season. 2024 season with Nebraska, he had plantar fasciitis, missed 6 games, didn't really have a good year to follow that up. So he's on he had a down year in his senior season going into his draft year, which isn't good. Still, Hill was projected in like 3 or 4 draft guru sites that I looked at, including NFL.com. They had him going in the 5th or 6th round. Well, he didn't get drafted at all last weekend. And not only did he not get drafted, he also didn't get signed by any team at all, which leads him to being picked up as a rookie going on a rookie tryout with the Vikings. And those guys' rookie tryouts are usually really, really long shots to even get a spot on the 90-man roster. However, the Vikings, I think, have a couple of spots left on that 90-man roster still. And so there is an opportunity here for Tommy Hill to at least get on there on the 90-man roster for the Vikings and fight for a roster spot in training camp and OTAs and preseason. And, the thing about Hill is that he's 6.5 feet tall. He's listed at 213 pounds, which is really big for a cornerback.
You mean 6'6" or 6.5 inch?
6.5 inch. So he's like he's not quite 6'1". But still, 6.5 feet, just under 6'1", 213 pounds. He's a bulky corner. He's a big corner. He really excels in zone coverage, from what I understand, shows great instincts, battles hard, is really good on 50-50 balls because of his strength. He does have an issue because he's not really quick closing with the hips and that sort of thing in man coverage. So he does have some issues in man coverage, the scouting report said. However, the Vikings have, in the 2 years that Brian Flores has been defensive coordinator in Minnesota, the Vikings have used zone coverage the vast majority of the time. So if they're going to continue to do that, and I think with the cornerbacks that they have right now, that's probably still going to be the case, Hill being a really good zone corner, that's a plus for him in potentially getting on the 90-man roster for the Vikings. So, Hill's a guy and also very good in run coverage. If it's possible, I think that he could be a guy who is a corner, but could be turned into a safety as well. The Vikings only didn't draft a safety. They only signed one guy in their 20-man rookie class as a safety. We know Brian Flores really values safeties. He often plays 3 of them in his base defense. And they've had success turning Cam Bynum. He was a corner at Cal, made him into a safety in the pros. They've done that with Jay Ward now at LSU, who started as a corner at LSU, transitioned to safety, and the Vikings have kept him there. So Tommy Hill's a guy, considering I think we still have a few depth, could use a little bit better depth at safety now with the fact that Bynum is gone, that Hill's a guy, keep an eye on him. He could, in this rookie tryout, he could earn a spot on the 90-man roster and could be somebody to keep an eye on in OTAs and training camp, because, again, his 2023 season was excellent. His PFF grades were off the charts good, and NFL.com ranked him as number 1 amongst all the corners at the combine in the total athleticism score. So this guy's a hell of an athlete. He needs to work on some things, but I think, the Vikings, again, they could have found another diamond in the rough here that they didn't draft.
That's interesting. It could be, absolutely. And I've dealt with plantar fasciitis, and it is a bear.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up with custom orthotics, do the whole roller at the bottom of the arch to the foot thing, all different things. Changed my boots. It can be painful, but if he's over that, then he should revert back to, 2023 form and be fine. And it sounds like with what he did at the combine and being such a high raw athletic score, it's returned. So he's going to be interesting to watch in the whole group of the youngsters that are coming in.
Indeed. He did have some, I think he did have some problems with team disciplinary issues in his college career. I think a couple of times he got suspended, and this is also what was an issue with Logan Brown, the offensive lineman that everybody was mentioned was a big steal in our undrafted rookie signings. Brown also got kicked off one of his teams or suspended. This is usually not, the Vikings have been very consistent in the players that they pick up, and they're usually really good team culture guys, pretty clean off the field and even on the field. Hill is a little bit of an outlier in that still, but still, I think promising prospect, and I'm glad that we've got him in for a rookie tryout because I think we need some help and competition in the secondary positions, and he can provide that.
Well, hopefully, if he had a maturity problem, that's been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And
not getting drafted or even signed can sometimes snap you into being
reality.
Yeah.
I can sign a contract only for vet minimum. Oh no. Or rookie minimum. I shouldn't say that.
Yes.
But it is what it is. Well, that covers what we wanted to for this week in Vikingsland. And you know what comes after that? Theme 2. This one we're going to be talking about how McCarthy's the man.
Yeah, and he is. But just to dial back a little bit, Dave, talk again about the Vikings offseason. And with what the Vikings did in March in free agency, a very busy, very productive free agency period for the Vikings, I think. Then they've just wrapped up their draft and also signing their 20 undrafted rookie free agents. And they've got the rookie mini camp coming up. But if you look at that, plus who the Vikings already had on the roster heading into that, yeah, I think most everybody agrees that the Vikings have looks like a really strong roster heading into 2025. A roster that should be able to compete definitely for a playoff spot at the minimum, and possibly for an NFC Championship berth and a Super Bowl berth.
The only other two I can see in the NFC that are this high of a quality are Detroit and Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Top to bottom.
Yes. I think most people that would agree with that, at least everything that I've read in the offseason from various publications, that's the assessment that's being made about the Vikings roster right now. The only question mark is actually J.J. McCarthy, who's going to be our starting quarterback in 2025. And the reasons for that are pretty clear, Dave. Even though, hey, J.J. McCarthy, 10th overall pick in the 2024 draft, a lot of potential. The Vikings love what they've seen from him. They love him. The players love him so far. We know that. But still, he has yet to play in an NFL regular season game. And so there's no guarantee. We have no baseline data for him as a pro as to how he's going to perform. So there's no real guarantee that he will be play at the kind of, even a competent level. And if J.J. McCarthy does not play well in 2025, even as strong as the Vikings roster is, they're going to have a hard time making the playoffs if J.J. McCarthy does not play well. So that's where the uncertainty lies. And that got to me thinking about, okay, we know that Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings offensive staff, they've been working with J.J. McCarthy since last year when he tore his meniscus in his right knee and his season was done. And we know that they've got a detailed plan from now until when the season starts to get him ready for when the games get real. And he's going to have tons of time and get hundreds of reps in OTAs and training camp to get ready for that. And even joint practices, if they arrange some of those with other teams, which simulates pretty well actual live games, although you don't tackle the quarterback. So there's a lot of things there that are going to help McCarthy be ready to be a starter on September 8th or 9th or whenever we play our season opener. Still, I don't think there's anything that substitutes for getting somebody ready for real live game action, real live game action, or preseason, which is as close as you can get to it, I think. And so that got me thinking, and maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but how is Kevin O'Connell going to handle J.J. McCarthy in the preseason? If you think back to when he became head coach of the Vikings in 2022, Kirk Cousins never played a snap in preseason. And last year...
And he enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah, and last year, Sam Darnold played one series.
Nor did he work on Tuesdays, by the way.
Yeah. Dave always loves throwing that in there. I take Tuesdays off. But I really want to win a Super Bowl. Trust me.
Yeah. But then Sam Darnold last year. Sorry.
Yeah, Sam Darnold last year, he played one series in the first preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and that was it for him the rest of the preseason. the thing about those two guys is we're in different positions in their career than JJ McCarthy is now. Like Kirk Cousins was a seasoned vet, didn't need any preseason snaps to be sharp and ready for game one of the NFL regular season. And Sam Darnold was pretty similar. He was going into his 7th NFL season, even though he's only 27 at the time. And he'd seen lots in preseason training camp and playing as a starter at the NFL level that he didn't really need a lot of preseason reps either. He's kind of beyond that. JJ McCarthy is not that guy yet. Basically, his only real game action was against the Raiders. He played about a quarter and a half. He threw 17 passes. He completed 11, threw a couple of touchdowns, 1 interception. He ran the ball a couple of times. Very, very, I thought, very impressive start for him. But that is it for like real live game when the bullets are flying. And by the time that the first preseason game comes in 2025 in August, he will have been 12 months from having faced real live players who are coming at you with bad intentions and who will tackle you and fuck you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they get a good shot at you, that is totally different than OTAs and training camp and the whole shebang. So, I feel that JJ McCarthy, to be ready when things get real in September in that first game, I think he's got to play 5 quarters in the preseason. I'd like to see him play most of the first half in the first preseason game and full three quarters in the second preseason game, so he gets those reps in live game action and is working with his teammates. And I think that's going to be very important. If you look at the Vikings quarterback room right now, Dave, and how it's made up, Sam Howell, yes, he's new to the team. He's new to the Vikings offense. And so I think that the Vikings they'll want to get him some work in preseason to see how he's gelling and picking up the offense. But he's also going into his 4th training camp and 4th offseason. So he's a vet. I don't think he needs a ton of action in preseason to be ready to be the backup in September. Brett Rippon, similar. He's our number 3 guy right now. He's going into his 5th training camp, and he's played quite a bit in past preseasons. I don't think that he needs a whole lot of action in preseason either to get ready. Max Brosmer, the Golden Gopher, the undrafted rookie free agent we bring in, I think Kevin O'Connell will want to see him play a fair bit, assuming he's still on the team at that point, to kind of get a feel for how he handles the pro game. But I think overall, there's a path here where JJ McCarthy can get those 5 quarters in 3 preseason games, and there's still enough playing time to give to Howell and a little bit to Rippon to get their feet wet, and enough to give to Brosmer if he's still around to see if he's, where he's at as a pro quarterback, and whether he's worth keeping on the team, on the practice squad, or whatever. But I really feel that JJ McCarthy needs to play those 5 quarters so he can get ready, used to the NFL's game speed. It'll be because when you get to the regular season, he's going to be the last time he would have played week in, week out in real live action would have been with Michigan back in January of 2023. That is a lifetime ago, really. So I think it's important he gets those amount of quarters. I think it's also going to be interesting and important who is Kevin O'Connell going to have play with JJ McCarthy if he does give him that amount of time. Last year when Sam Darnold played the 1 preseason series against Oakland, the Vikings had all 5 starting offensive linemen playing in that game. They had Josh Oliver on tight end. They had CJ Ham in the game. Jordan Addison was there. Jalen Naylor, Ty Chandler. So the only starters from the 2024 offense who weren't there were Justin Jefferson, who's never going to play in a preseason game ever again. Aaron Jones, who was 29 years old. So the Vikings aren't giving him any hits to save his body for the season. And then TJ Hawkinson was the other guy, but Hawkinson, I don't think was even cleared for football activity at that time. So the bulk of guys, starters, were playing with Darnold in that first series. My question is, if McCarthy's going to play 4 or 5 quarters in the preseason, does KOC play most of the starters that amount of time? Because just as there's risk that McCarthy could get injured if you play him a lot in the preseason, the same thing holds if you play a lot of starters. in the preseason that amount of time. But then the thing is, do you want McCarthy in there playing a lot with second teamers who he's not going to play with in the regular seasons? I think there's a lot of things for Kevin O'Connell that he's got to think about there, Dave. But I do feel strongly that JJ McCarthy, at least this year, he needs to play a lot in the preseason, and there is some risk there, but I think there's a lot of reward there as well. But that is not how Kevin O'Connell's handled it in previous years. But again, he had veteran quarterbacks that had been through the wars that he was dealing with. McCarthy is not that guy. But Dave, interested to see if you feel that, yes, McCarthy needs to play and play a lot, or you don't think it's going to make a hill of beans difference in getting him ready for the regular season?
It's a great question. And we might want to look to different people. You brought up Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. How much do they play?
Yeah.
And they play every preseason. Now, I understand the philosophy about you don't want your starters taking a lot of abuse. Now, there are the joint practices, and we have 2 scheduled this year, theoretically. And so joint practices will probably mostly be this young man, and you don't want to have a joint practice on Thursday and then turn around and play him live on Saturday, because there's not enough, well, I would say time to heal, but you're not getting hit in a joint practice. It's an interesting question. Do you stick him out there for a quarter, right? First quarter. Now, the offensive line is going to be out there, I'm sure, as they work on their chemistry. Famous words for offensive line players. You need the chemistry. Well, the starters, Justin Jefferson, no way. No.
Yeah.
Put him on the shelf, have him watch, put him in the owner's box. I don't care. Put him up with the coaches, whoever. No. He can warm up, and that's it. There's, Addison, possibly, because he'll need the time, because if his legal case gets resolved, he's looking at a suspension. Yes, yeah. Norsevius, it is beer 30, and I could use one. It is, I don't know. Because he's young, I want to say yes, play him. But I understand the risk of doing that. But I want him to get in the groove as fast as possible. And that means playing him at least for some time. Hey, I like the old way, where it built up time over the preseason games. We had 4, and the first one they'd go a little less than a quarter, 2-3 series, and then they'd go more, and then they'd go over to half, sort of deal. And then the 4th one was, nah. But it's going to be interesting to see how KOC does it, because it's all up to him. And along with, Wade Phillips and everybody on his staff that are mentoring the young man. It's going to be interesting. If he goes out there in the first series or 2 series, takes 2 series, and he's balling out, drive, touchdown, pull him.
Yeah, that's true. You've seen enough at that point.
Mm-hmm. And it may take that. It may be determined by how well does he perform. How well is he doing in those joint practices? How, it's all up to him, and we'll see. And how, much chemistry they want to build between him and his receivers, because, he's throwing already. So that's in progress. Now, granted, it's not running against live competition, and there's a step up there, but I suspect they will start him early, as long as we don't have that joint practice right before, and see how it goes.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm sure that they will not be locked into he must play 5 quarters, or again, you're probably right that it's going to depend on how he looks in the first couple of series or first 3 series that he gets. Or if his first series in the first game that he plays is a 3 and out, well, obviously he's going to go out for more because they're not, and sometimes you go 3 and out, not on any fault of your own. The left guard, held, and then he was first and 30 or second and 30.
Or wide receiver dropped a ball, type of deal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, it happens. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I haven't had any alcohol today, and that's probably why I'm tripping over my tongue.
You'll never make that mistake again, Dave.
No, not once we get moved in. Oh, heck no. I already got a place picked out for where I'm putting all the bar stuff. So
the liquor cabinet is planned out.
It is. And my viewing TV it'll be liquor cabinet, viewing TV, liquor cabinet, and my viewing TV will be on top of a shelving system, which will hold bottles as well. And I'll probably LED light that to highlight it, and it'll be good. We'll see how it goes. It's all in the mind right now. Mm-hmm. But like I said, when we move in, I might give everybody a tour, but it's the assembly of the studio will take a bit, but my first priority is to deaden the echoes from it. And that takes putting in soft things and things in it. In just an empty basement, you're going to get echo. Even it's carpeted, but you're going to get echo back and forth. Well, I put my desk and I eventually buy a couch and chair and get sound absorption on the wall, put up my purple shag rug, which most people didn't see before, but I've used quite a bit for sound suppression. It's going to look and improve a lot better. And hopefully I want to get it to where I can host a couple of people live as well, like Ted and Drew, and from Vikings Report, bring them back to a good old Good Morning Gallahorn reunion sort of deal. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And Northvius asks, is that good old Metrodome turf? Actually, no, it is.
It's better.
It's better. It's a little leafy deal my daughter got, and she's hanging it up there. And it works too for sound suppression because it's got little air gaps and it traps sound. But you see some pillows behind me. All that's to deaden the echo. But that's this basement. My new one is a lot worse because it's all smooth walls for now.
Yeah. Dave's going to get that rectified quickly.
Yes, it's number one on the priority. Like I said, we'll find out this week. Hopefully we get our furniture, and plus we're buying stuff, and we'll move in solidly. But because of that, shows may be moving around a little bit during this week. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You'll have at least 30 minutes notice for when we go live. And we'll go with that. And I know Tyler wants to take a bit of time off. Well, he can wait until I'm done. So.
Anyways,
any last words there, buddy?
Yeah, just we didn't talk about it, but JJ McCarthy met with the Vikings media this week. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Now, it's the first time he's talked in front of the Vikings media, but he had been talking to like Kay Adams and in a couple other spots, Rich Eisen, he'd been on the show pre-draft and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to mention that, like, I know it isn't him throwing footballs on the field, Dave, but I think you and I are in agreement with this. Every time this kid gets and speaks in front of the media, I'm just so impressed by what comes out of his mouth. And he just shows leadership qualities to me, up the yin yang. And I know that they work on them with the PR staff, but still, you don't know exactly what questions you're going to get asked. And are you ready to start? I know I'm ready to start. That is what I want to hear out of my starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't look rehearsed. It doesn't look like he's faking it. That is, every time he speaks, I just become impressed by what he says and how he says it. And I think that this is why you hear Vikings players, veterans, rave about this kid. And I think that this is what he's doing, and even what he's answering, the answers that he provides to the media, I think it does bode well, I think, for what he's going to do on the field. I just don't think this guy is phased at all by what's facing him. He knows it's a big responsibility. He knows there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, but I believe that he can handle that pressure and not let it affect him on the field. And I think the fact that he can do that is going to translate onto the field. When things get woolly, he'll be able to stay calm, cool, and collected and make the plays that need to be made, whereas so many quarterbacks cannot do that.
And he won't vapor lock like a quarterback we used to have, right? Rap. It is. And Aaron, I'm going to miss Texas. I love Texas, by the way. But it is what it is. Yes, you're right. He's got the it factor when it comes to leadership. Just from what I'm seeing, he's got the it factor. And we need somebody like that to take us to the glory land. And hopefully we get there.
And yeah, Vokovite was mentioned that Chase Daniels said that he looked nervous. I don't know. I'm not sure where Chase got that.
Chase Daniels, I saw that deal with him and Rossini, and they're so full of BS. Just absolute crap. So
Rossini's still just trying to find a way for Aaron Rodgers to get.
And I wonder if that's who's pushing the narrative. But who knows? And yes, Aaron, ADHD can become a superpower in some people, and I think it is for him. So, no, Gary, I haven't been out to do that yet. I have not. It's on the list, along with many other things. GMAC moved up to the St. Louis area. We got family up here, is why. So, that's today's show. What do we say, Darren?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching. You all rock, and SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!